Pretty quickly, the list of the 4 kids that initially signed up turned into over 100 kids, and we knew we had something.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. My name is Brett Gilliland. I'm your host today, and I'm here with our special guest for today's episode, Norbert Sygdziak. Norbert, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Brad, thank you. I'm a huge fan and super thankful to be on this episode with you.
Yeah, so Norbert, I would love for you to tell people about Ride Along, what you've created, uh, the quick story of how you got started, and what you guys are doing to serve the communities that you're in.
Absolutely. Ride Along is kind of a baby that was born in my kitchen, literally. It's a business that's been built out of a personal need. A little over 4 years ago, um, we have I have 2 kids, my partner and I, and our youngest was lost on a yellow school bus. It was really a freak accident where teacher placed him on the wrong bus, assuming they all go to the same place. um, Hours went by without us knowing where he is, and what became really more scary for us and visibly was the fact that the school couldn't really identify which bus he was on. That became
So
something
sorry,
that
sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
Norbert, but did the driver of that bus like ask him to exit the bus, or was he able to stay on the bus?
So the driver actually dropped everyone, the 40 kids that were on the bus, where they needed to go, and then realized there's one more child and brought him back to the school. And
Okay, so
that's when
at least that, but that was scary as a
yes.
parent, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we hear so many stories every single day of a child being left on the bus and the bus being placed in the lot and no one knows about it. So that didn't work out for us, but it opened our eyes. There's this a little false, assumptions that when you're placing a child in a school bus that's placed in front of a school or anywhere else, that there's automatic safety with that. And I think that what is important to understand is that our school districts in this country are so underfunded, understaffed, that a lot of that is not paid attention to. Nevertheless, I wanted a solution for my own kids, and looking, both being working, parents, I wanted to see if there's a possibility of hiring someone that can drive them. But of course, the cost is extensive. So I talked to parents from my kids' school and said, "Would you share that ride with our kids?" And pretty quickly, the list of the 4 kids that initially signed up turned into over 100 kids, and we knew we had something. So what was initially launched for our own community, really became started the word started to spread, and within the first 30, 60 days, we were getting calls from surrounding cities, states, and just people passing the message that something like that, like this is out there. So decided to leave the legal career and start and focus on the business. And we're currently in 20, communities, 20 cities throughout the country, and growing.
Wow, what a story. And I love that you solved the problem for not just your family, apparently, but for lots of families out there who are concerned about where their child's going to end up if they just get placed on a bus somewhere. Anyway, so cool. Thank you for sharing that story with us. So, in the
Of
last
course.
4 years, you grew past that seven-figure mark, at least that initial $1 million.
Yeah.
You've got a growing team. You have to have, and there's a bit of complexity, I would imagine, in finding the drivers, the
Mhm.
trusted drivers across all those locations. Talk to us a little bit about the complexity of that, just to like blow our minds for
Yeah,
a
yeah.
minute or
No,
two here.
we wanted to build a business. I wanted to build a business really from the standpoint of a parent, of what we want to see and be part of, as we know our kids are getting to and from school, and whether they have sports after school, the flexibility. So, our drivers are fully vetted, background checked, drug tested, etc. We do it up to 3 times within a school year randomly. So it's not like we just do it one time. Um, our drivers have part-time jobs for us. They work part-time. They work about an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning and about an hour and a half in the afternoon. Our carpools are anywhere from 3 students up to 10 students in a 12-passenger van. We also do provide, one student to a private driver, where families have more, um, have more complex schedules that the kids have with different, things after school. Um, and we provide the technology that allows the parents to be part of the process, where they're able to live communicate via chat, to give the driver an update of what's happening, and also be able to track their kids to and from school and see, if there's traffic, etc. They don't have to call a number or find out what's happening. They can see it live, within the app.
Okay, that's fascinating. Everything you've built is amazing. Now let's get to the side of this where you don't. This isn't like something you've done multiple times, growing a business like this. So all of a sudden, you've got all these customers, all these clients, all these drivers. You've got a business that's grown to a million plus, and uh, you've got to learn how to shift from an idea in your kitchen to a capable business building CEO, right? Like,
Yeah.
talk to us about some of the leadership challenges that you've had over the last few years, Norbert. What's been
Oh boy, I mean, look, I don't know
difficult?
that we have enough time to go through all of them, but I'll try to get to some. Look, starting a business is an amazing journey, but it's a journey that many don't quite understand what it consists of. There is an aspect of the idea of the business, the model, how you want it to operate, and there is what kind of leader are you going to be once it's outside of your kitchen, once it's just you or two people, once you have to motivate and lead a team, but then also when does the line blur from being the leader to being a father or a partner to who you're with, right? Those three challenges tend to blend every single day, 14, 15, 16 hours, each day. So, um, for me personally, the journey of becoming a leader is one that I still learn every single day. It's not something that you figure out because there's different steps of your business. There's when you're early on, you're wearing 185 hats and you're doing everything. You do it from being a driver to a salesperson to bringing supplies and everything. And as you build your team out and have people who you trust to handle some of that, one of the hardest things to becoming a good leader is understanding that it's okay to give up some of those hats because I think there's too many views that no one will do it as good as I will, and that tends to lead you towards a path of being that micromanager, that leader who just feels like if I don't have a hands on it, no one else will do it the same way. That is a hard lesson to learn. That is a hard habit to break. It's one that I'm
What
still
helped you? What helped you learn that, Norbert? How did you break that habit?
by making a lot of mistakes, by losing good people because you try to, micromanage too much, by understanding that
Mm.
who you are reflects on your business and actually almost having a out of body experience where you step away and almost see how you react in meetings and on Zoom calls and the changing ecosystem of what a business is where people don't want to come to the office anymore and how do you handle all those things. So being my own personal critic helped me understand what I don't want to hear, right? What people don't want to hear. So you sometimes get so clouded with growth and thinking that you're going to become the next Uber, Lyft, or Amazon, etc., that you don't take a step back and realize, wow, I've made a lot of mistakes, but that's not a judgment on me. It's okay because the only way I'm going to become a better person, a better father, a better leader is by understanding I've made those mistakes and kind of starting over and making sure that you don't do them again. So, um, taking constructive criticism for what it is and not being offended by it, and understanding that my limitations as a founder, there are limitations. There's only so much. There's a lot of people out there who know much more about how to grow this business much bigger than I do, and listening and learning from them is key.
That's a great example of what I'll call checking your ego and just saying, hey, I don't know everything today that I
Yeah,
need to know tomorrow or next week or next year, but if I will stay open to the signals that are coming my way, if I'll ask questions, if I'll listen, I can learn the things that I need to make adjustments on and
yeah.
start again. I love how you said that. I can make a mistake and then I can start again.
It's one of the biggest challenges that I've learned that I've had to kind of adjust to is I used to always kind of look at people who use the words experts and expertise in some things. I think we can become great students of a business, of a product, but um, we are always going to learn because things are going to change. Even the business functions model are going to change. So the idea that someone just is an expert and understands all of it is a little far fetched to me because I see myself more of a student of it that's willing to learn and pass it on. So there is an expertise level to it, but in every task, every challenge, there's years and years of learning and changes that we need to continue, to view, and I think that's how we become smarter about what we do.
Well, I love that. I love that attitude and approach. I think about all the entrepreneurs, all the business owners out there, including the ones who are listening. And I
Yep.
think business owners are some of the best people at figuring out how to improve something, right? They're like, my marketing's not working. I got to figure that out. I got to learn how to sell, or I got to learn how like improve my product or service. And they're so good on the stuff that they're looking at outside of themselves, and they optimize and they tweak and they innovate and they do all those things to make the business work. But then for some reason there's a bigger block in our minds when we get to the point where it's about us and
Hmm.
seeing the improvements we need to make in ourselves. and
Absolutely.
and I think what you just described was beautifully put. It was like, I need this out of body experience a little bit. How do I get out of myself,
Hmm.
see myself in the moments, in those leadership moments, and how I'm acting, and make adjustments.
Yeah.
Uh, but I know
Absolutely.
entrepreneurs. Oh, go ahead, Norbert. I
No,
want
no,
to
I
hear
was gonna
from you.
say, absolutely. What I've experienced is that we all have flaws, and as we work our way through the corporate, world, and in different jobs that we have, we tend to become very close-minded, and understanding that I just have to get the best out of my job. I have to get the best out of my job, and you make a lot of mistakes. And it took me my journey, which is still going, took me true 4 years to snap myself out of it so far since the beginning of my business, to understand that, as you said, founders have a solution to a problem they might have found that works, and then automatically they get surrounded by a community, whether it's the financial community, banking community, venture, as you go through funding rounds, etc. People who tell you you are a great mind, who are solving a problem, but there's very little criticizing some of the methods that you're doing, and that's when the true genius comes out, because the only way we're able to learn is through criticizing. And so what I started to do in our offices is put whiteboards everywhere, because ideas just have to kind of flow, and I might be able to write what I think our marketing should look like, and if you think that that's a bad idea, write what you think next to it, because it doesn't mean that my idea sticks. And just being able to walk away from my idea because I'm the CEO, and be open minded to hearing everybody else's. It's a hard process, but it's worth it.
Yeah, very good, very very good. Okay, so you're starting to learn some lessons about leadership. You're seeing yourself differently. You're making adjustments. You're growing. You're learning. Let's talk about some of as the team grew. Could we get more specific about a challenge that you had as a leader, and how you overcame that challenge, or what you learned?
Yeah, look, one of the biggest challenges that I personally had is that um, I took every criticism as a personal attack on me, right? And I had to understand that even though I came up with the idea and I started building this company and the model, it's not about me anymore. It's about the ecosystem that we created, right? It is about our clients. We also live in a world where we are all connected through the internet, social medias, etc. Right? People can go to their local Starbucks that they go twice a day, every single day, and yet on a Wednesday they could have a someone who is at the who's making their coffee, who isn't the friendliest person, and they'll jump online when I get home and say, had an awful experience at this Starbucks, right? Even though they go
Right.
there twice a day and they buy that same coffee because they love it. It's a world of kind of openness and transparencies and opinions. And I had to understand that those aren't necessarily aimed at me personally. They're just, you're not going to please everyone. As long as your mission is to help the community, you have to detach yourself from understanding that there's a good and bad way to business, and you
Mhm.
can't solve every little problem that comes your way. Sometimes you have to use your own, village that you build at your business to help solve that problem, or understand that everybody has a right to have a bad day. So that was my biggest challenge, to not take things personally, and to understand that the solutions have to come as an ecosystem of the business instead of your own self.
Yeah, really great lessons. I'd love to spend a little bit longer on that idea of not taking things personally,
Hmm.
because I think one of the challenges many of us as business owners have is separating from the business. Like our identity and the business
Yeah.
is so intertwined that we think every little bad thing in the business represents, that's my failing, that's my bad, that's my whatever,
A
and
hundred
we can
percent.
have a lot of, yeah, we can have a lot of insecurity around that.
Oh well, insecurity is a great word. I'm a great word. I'm sure. I'm glad that you said it because, look, when you're starting a business, what many new founders don't understand is, and it's not all. There's some companies that come into the markets with a lot of money and just investments, and they're able to build a team of 40, 50 people and handle everything in house. But that's maybe 5% of businesses, right? 95%
Yeah,
of businesses are really bootstrapping, building this from scratch. And when you're building things from scratch, you don't have the funding to hire a CFO or this person your first year when you start. So you rely on third party vendors, right? There's a lot of great businesses out there that help you what you do. But your reputation also depends on those third party vendors and their job, right? Because no one on the outside, whether it's a client or or just someone visiting or etc., is going to necessarily care whether you use 10 vendors to help you with invoicing, billing, all those things. They just know it's going through you, right? So you have to be able to understand that um, there's contracts in place, that you work with these vendors, that it's not all on you, and that you're not going to solve their issues. All you can do is communicate to say we use a third party vendor and this is what happened, and we're trying to work with them to fix this. But you can't take it all on yourself because it bruises your ego, and that was my biggest problem when I got into owning my own business. Is my ego was really inflated because everybody kept telling me you're sitting on a rocket ship. This is an amazing business, right? We launched the business 5 months before COVID started, right? And then COVID shut us down. Now, thankfully, our model is based on one that we don't have much overhead. So we were able to maintain our drivers, volunteer their efforts through hospitals, food pantries, to keep them working. But your ego gets it gets inflated by blown up by really the people that you surround yourself with. And if those people aren't able to ground you a bit to say you have a long way to go, when you're ready to set go, you're operating on that ego being really high. So every little thing that occurs, whether it's your fault or not, it bruises your ego. And then you come home and then you have to be a dad with your kids and you have to realize that I got to let that go because my ego's bruised and I'm trying to play soccer with my kids, because I'm barely ever home. And that is kind of what we touched on earlier, is slightly is that is the mental health part of owning your own business, where it's challenging. You have to really be able to turn off business and leave it in the car when you come home, focus on the family and be that dad and that partner, etc. Because once those lines get blurred, you find yourself carrying that with you 24/7. And that can be draining on you.
extremely draining. I know before we hit record, we talked about how you like to speak to younger people who are thinking about starting a business, and some of this mental, emotional health and the family impact was part of that conversation. I'd love to. It's a reality for all of us who own a business. I'd love to dive into that just for a few minutes and explore what has that been like for you, and what have you learned in your journey that might help someone else.
Yeah, look, I do, and I try to, I speak to new founders weekly and try to help, with what I can. I think the biggest switch from going into having a job to owning a business is, when you work at a job, you're able to, whether you clock out at 5 o'clock or whether you work till 10 p.m., when you clock out, you'll clock out, right? If your company you work for closed their doors overnight and they sent you an email that you no longer have a job, you're just going to look for a new job. And there's a certain level of that weight is not on your shoulders. When you go into starting a business, you carry that 24/7. There is what I try to explain to all the new founders is that I talk to is there's a lot of books out there that say Amazon started out of, out of this little hole and became Amazon. Microsoft became this, you know, but there is really no books that say what do these founders went through emotionally, physically, draining wise. How do you get people ready for that? Well, I'll tell you how. You're not just going to go into a room or your kitchen and say, I'm working on this business, I'm building an app, I'm growing a service, I'm building a product. You have to think about, how will I pay for that product? How will I make payroll next week? Do I have any help? Is there enough hours in a day for me to do that? Well, my kids also have homework. Will I be able to help them? Because if I don't, and my partner has to do it, my wife, my partner, then that's going to come between us because she's the only one handling all that, he or she. Um, how will you handle that? There's going to be people in your life that are going to tell you this is the worst idea ever. You should have kept your job. And there's going to be people who are tell you this is amazing, keep going, but really don't have much to offer to help you with this, right? So all those things you balance every single day. And if you don't address them, if you don't prep your mind, that's what affected me the most, which is I did not know the line of when to be a father, a CEO, a founder, or a partner to my, to my wife. That became the hardest part for me. Especially when you're growing the business, together. How do you get upset at your COO and then yet be friendly with your wife, right? That's a really tough challenge. And when you realize that you're doing this for 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, and now you find yourself growing your beard more often because you're not shaving as much because you're focusing on the business, and you stop going to the gym because every 5 minutes matters to you of where you're going to be, that has an effect on your physical and your mental health. And now you're so invested that you feel like if I pause now, it's going to be on me if it fails. So a lot of, there's a lot of talk about how startups, within the first year or two, they close. But it's not just because they're short on cash flow or they didn't have the business. A lot of it also is because the founder's mental health gets affected to a point where they can't continue anymore, and because they have not built, surround themselves with people who are able to pick up where they can't, it stops. And
Well,
this is the idea of you can't carry all of it in your head. You can't be the only one who can do this the right way. You have to be able to trust people and take their advice. That was my biggest mistake also early on, is I heard people talk, but I didn't take their advice. As I heard people tell me that what the, advice was, I already in my mind said, no, they're wrong. This is how we're going to do it. And that's one of the most toxic ways of how to go about building a team and business.
well, Norbert, I think everything you just shared about the mental and emotional health, the physical. I mean, we didn't even throw in the completely the financial health
Yeah,
things. Like
right.
so much goes into getting this business off the ground, and so much is at risk. I think everybody listening felt that, right? They remember that. Yeah, we're not talking to people who are thinking about starting a
Hmm.
business. We're talking to people who are in a similar spot as you, and they're remembering with you how taxing it is. I remember the moment. My business a little unique because we built it inside of another company,
Hmm.
and then I bought it and we spun it out. So I didn't really feel the weight while it was in the safe harbor of that larger company. But as soon as I bought it and we spun that business out, like the moment I signed, that the day that it was mine,
It
I
changed.
felt I
Yeah.
felt that weight. Yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, now I really feel the weight that I've been talking to all these business owners about." It was different. And
Yeah, the
so,
best way that I describe to people is for those who have children is, look at yourself before prior to having kids, how you able to go to work, go to bar, have a beer, and then think about the moment where your child enters this world and you hold them for the first time. As a father, I'll tell you with my kids, my firstborn, the first things went through my mind is, okay, I need to protect them now. I need insurance. I need better job. I need more money. How am I going to pay for college? That's how your business becomes, right?
yeah,
Okay, where do I go from here? I built a safe little space prior to it, but now that space has changed. And that's what people have to be really truly ready for. And I'm not going to say they're going to be ready for it from the day they start, but they need to be conscious to know that this is coming.
yeah.
Look, owning
But
your own business is one of the most rewarding things you can ever do. You're going to work 100 times harder than you work at any job that you've ever worked. It's rewarding, but it's also going to feel 100 times more painful than you do being at a job, right? And
yeah,
and 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 that's the part that I wish the, startups, the new founders world was able to kind of talk about a little more, is that emotional journey. And then, you get through different steps of that journey. Even if you raise funding or get funding, your job doesn't end there. Now you have more, responsibility to return on that, right? So
Yeah.
it becomes a challenging. It's an amazing ecosystem, but it will test your limits like you have no idea.
Yes. Again, I mean, you've been on at this for the last 4 or 5 years, and some people listening have been doing this for 20 or 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Like a long time, and they've been carrying that weight. What have you found, for just briefly, what have you found as essential personal care routines or items, or like how have you other than just acknowledging that the weight is heavy and it's
Yeah.
there, and starting to like tame your ego a little bit and rely on others, what else have you found to be helpful for you to be well?
The number one thing that I learned is at some point in the evening when you get home, whether it's 6, 7, 8 o'clock, turn the phone off. You can't answer every email at all times.
Mm.
Detach yourself from the business. Number two is when I wake up in the morning, and this is really, I'll be honest with you, I just started accepting this practice not too long ago. When you wake up in the morning, take the first hour to your self care. Okay, that means leave the phone alone. Meditate if that's what you do. Go to the gym if that's what you do, or sometimes just have a cup of coffee and tea and sit at your table and just think about nothing, right? Just having that, or have a conversation with your family and your kids. I went through a journey where, through my business and working long hours, I've put on significant, weight and needed to get myself back to the gym. Someone who's played sports my whole life, so for me, it was playing basketball again and going to the gym again and separating myself, that outlet that says for this hour, for these 2 hours to this day, I'm going to put my mind something else. It's something that I also enjoyed at some point, but I might have forgotten of how it felt. um, because your business isn't going away. There's certain, when you wake up in the morning from the hours of 6 to 8 or 6 to 9, whatever, if your business opens at 8 or 9 o'clock, then that's your business starting hours. You're not required to be there or answer emails prior to that. Be mindful of the time that you have for yourself. That's number one. Number two, my biggest challenge and lesson that I've helped is talk less, listen more. Right? I tended to always have a quick solution for every problem there was. And sometimes what I found myself when I had sort of almost that out of body experience of understanding what faults I have before I started to talk about what faults my business has, is to understand that no, I don't have, all the answers to every question, and I don't need to. I can just listen and think about it, do research, and then figure out what the best approach about it is. And maybe at that point, we still don't have a true answer, but at least we're taking the steps towards that answer. So those really,
Yeah.
for me, those are the two important lessons. Is taking that time to care for yourself mentally and physically, whether it's an hour, in the morning or after work, and really understand of what your faults are, such as mine was to listen more, speak less. And the last one that I'll give you, I don't want to overextend that point, is don't isolate your friends and your support group and your family, because many founders, and it will do that because they don't have time. They put a lot of hours to work, but when you realize after years of doing so that your community that you kind of isolated became really small, now you don't have that outlet to talk to someone about something else. And keeping your close friends and family close by, don't isolate them, spend time with them. It takes 3 seconds to send a text message, call. That's important to your mental psyche to make sure you're not just one in a box trying to build this business.
Don't go crawl in a cave.
Yeah,
No,
exactly, exactly.
yeah,
Don't let your beard grow, and yeah, exactly,
no Batman syndrome. You got to come
exactly.
out. Yeah. All right. Hey, Norbert, this has been amazing. And your business has been growing so fast that you're moving through these lessons quicker than some. And some people would benefit from hearing what some of the struggles are right now. Like we're going to get really real for just a second. You've
Yeah.
been, and you, by the way, you've been fantastic.
Hmm.
But if you continue the journey of just being open and vulnerable, what are today's growth challenges for you? Like
Yeah,
what's ahead of some of our listeners?
absolutely. Look, for us, for Ride Along, for me, the immediate growth was so fast that you had to pinch yourself and say, "Oh my God, like what's happening?" And for Ride Along, for myself, the challenges right now were actually slowing down our own growth, kind of going back a little bit to step one, to building a better culture, a better kind of a system that might have been grown too fast because you just needed to put bodies in seats because you didn't know how things were coming. And it's okay. It's you're not you're actually, when you look at big companies that have grown under certain, example, Uber, Lyft, amazing companies, for change the ecosystem of, transportation in the world. But Lyft is still not profitable, right? Uber just became profitable, $1 billion, valuations, etc. And I bring it up because it's that much harder to rebuild the wheel when you're such a big company, that you're
Hmm.
not going to go backwards and say, maybe we need to tweak this, change this, because now you've become something that everyone is watching. You're under the microscope, and you're so big, it's impossible to change. It's okay to pause your own growth sometimes in order to address the issues, the concerns, the things that you have to do, and then regrow again. So for us, we actually kind of paused our growth to say, we know that the demand is there. Let's address the management issues, the running issues, the, some of the model tweaks that we want to, so that we can address every community in this country without feeling like we're leaving people left out. Um, so that's what we decided to do, and are excited to really go into this school year in 2024, 2025, again, focus on growth again. But it took that year, 2023, 2024 school year, for us to really say, you know what, um, we can continue growing this way, but we might not like what we see later. Okay,
Yeah.
so pause for a second, restructure certain things, regroup, and I'll share with you, to be vulnerable, as we talked about, is part of that is my own growth. I needed to become a different leader to take the next step. Because if I took the next step to my company under the leadership that I used to provide the first 3 years, it would have been limiting. I would have been limiting this company from its growth. And
Mm.
it's okay to pause and say, hey, you know what? Let's rebuild some things. Let's rebuild my mind a bit. Let me step back a little bit. And now let's focus on the real growth.
Yeah. Fantastic way to wrap up this episode. Norbert, you've been great. Ride Along sounds like an amazing business. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are there any other parting words that you'd like to share as we wrap this up?
Yeah, the only that I leave your, listeners is to understand how important podcasts like yours are. Be open minded to be vulnerable. If you asked me to do this podcast 3 years ago, I would say no. I wouldn't be vulnerable. I wouldn't be able to tell you the mistakes I've made, etc. But there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. The only way you're going to improve at the art form that you are creating, whether it's a service product or even at your job, is by understanding that we all make mistakes every single day, and we can get better at them, and we don't have to do it alone. We can do it through resources like your, like this is great, and people who listen to this. I listen to, podcasts every time that you have one out, and I absolutely love them. And I think it's very, very helpful to make sure to understand that you're not the only one out there who might be struggling, whether it's mentally, physically, or even in business. People are going through it every single day, and you can go through it, with them.
All right. Thanks again, Norbert. And thank you all for listening to the Seven Figure Journey podcast. We'd love for you to share, do all the things to help us put this in front of as many seven figure business owners as possible. The journey can feel a little lonely sometimes, but there are other people out there going through similar things, and we're gonna mine those experiences for all the gold we can and share it on these podcasts. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.